Chief Minister of Gujarat, Srimati Anandiben Patel, the Finance and Industry Minister, Shri Saurabh, the very distinguished heads and representatives of the three regulatory organizations, officials, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege for me to be associated with the formal launch of the International Financial Center in Gandhinagar. The last 1 year particularly has been extremely eventful. From somewhat a depressive situation, we've seen now the emergence of a newer enthusiasm, but then there is a lot of distance that we still have to cover. Since Parliament is not in session these days, and almost every other day we get an opportunity to travel, with a development-friendly government in Delhi, encouraging almost all states, irrespective of the political complexion of who's in power, I can actually see a lot of competitive federalism in action. And it is this that will make India grow. I was in Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal yesterday, a state which has conventionally, after independence for almost half a century, been regarded as the center of the Bimaru states. And I was surprised when the presentation was given to me that the last 1 decade it has seen a double-digit growth. Its agriculture, thanks to Narmada, in the last few years is 20% plus. And if it is 20% plus, that only indicates the grassroots satisfaction that can emerge. Today when I visited the Gift City in Gandhinagar, and a presentation was given by Mr. Sudhir Mankad, who as the chairman of SEBI said has devoted himself to this project, I could see one of the most futuristic ideas coming up. The state of Gujarat trying to make itself the hub of financial activities, something which has been attributed earlier only to Mumbai. Tomorrow I'll be in Andhra Pradesh, where there is a very ambitious plan to have a very modern capital, and we'll be going to some of the relatively more underprivileged areas of the state, which require a lot of developmental support. I mention this because the approach of the central government is to encourage this developmental activity. In fact, when we implemented the 14th Finance Commission report, the largest beneficiary is the state of Uttar Pradesh. I personally went before Vibrant Gujarat to Bengal so that we could encourage industry from coming to Bengal. If in the present budget we have announced some tax soaps, it is for Bihar and West Bengal, because the Prime Minister has been repeatedly saying it's the eastern part of India that requires to be encouraged. Most of our collections from minerals and coal are going back to those states in the eastern past. so that that relatively lesser developed part of India could gallop further. Now this has to be seen in contradistinction to the fact that even though you got your SEZ status in 2011, you had to wait for a change of government in New Delhi before the GIFT City could get its relevant push in terms of its regulatory and other approvals. It had to wait for 3 years. And it is this very reason that in the last few years had brought down India's growth rates. Because rather than be focused on a single emphasis of encouraging growth wherever it can be encouraged, and different approach for collateral reasons has been adopted. I have not the least doubt that today is a landmark step as far as Gujarat is concerned. Gujarat has been traditionally known for its entrepreneurship. It has the advantage of being a manufacturing state. It has the advantage of a natural instinct of business being a part of popular culture itself. It also has a large coastline, and its entrepreneurship has fully utilized the coastline as an instrument of development. But then there were areas where Gujarat had to grow. It's now growing in the last few years in terms of urbanization. It's growing in terms of its retail trade. It's growing in terms of its medical facilities. It still has a lot of distance, and it's trying to grow in terms of quality of education. And that's an area in the coming years where we have to concentrate a little more. And then an initiative taken several years ago to have an international financial sector hub in Gandhinagar. And as was mentioned just now, the advantage of that hub is that you almost have a entrepreneurial township there. The banks are there, the insurance companies are there, the sovereign funds are there, the pension funds are there. All those who have deep pockets to finance investment are all there. And to undertake this business, you require a back office support, so you have the best of technology and the best of environment. It's almost a miracle that I saw with the kind of futuristic planning that has been undertaken. And I would like, as a part of this commitment to competitive federalism, all other states to emulate. They may not have the potential to create such financial hubs, but it's also a role model for creation of smart cities, where almost without a core investment, you can actually create a first-rate global smart city. You will have a large number of office buildings. The minutest of details of how water preservation takes place, what kind of that, it will probably be the only city which will provide tap water which is capable of drinking. Its entire municipal services will be underground. You won't have wires hanging around. It will be professionally managed. Its air conditioning will be managed through water chillers. And the core area which has been used for this, the investment, is some wasteland of the government. And that wasteland of the government is developed through world-class infrastructure. And once you develop it, your resource becomes the FSI available on that land. So you invite people to come and build, and you make that land availability almost at a negligible cost. Now, it was a very adventurous kind of a idea to undertake. It's split into 3 phases. Phase 1 is currently on. Hopefully over the next 2-3 years, there will be a lot more activity than what we are seeing just now. It will have residential complexes, it will have schools, it will have malls, it will have business centers. And probably it can compare with any best financial hub in the world. How do others emulate this? How does, for instance, Andhra Pradesh, which has to now build a new capital, emulate this? You use your land as a resource. You use the FSI available on the land as capital. Your entire investment is the initial infrastructure, which when you get the development charges, you earn more than what you have spent. And eventually you have created a city without costing anything to the public exchequer. And eventually it's a city which will provide a lot of revenue both to state and central exchequer. Of course, this is not without its own pitfalls. As I mentioned, you can have a lethargic central government sitting on it for 3 years and trying its best to suppress the idea. On the contrary, I would ask other states to emulate the ideas. It's only then that we can create these 100 smart cities, which can have a galloping effect as far as India's GDP is concerned. And then, of course, it has its usual problems. When somebody saw a great idea being implemented, his best weapon to stop it is a public interest litigation. So I am given to understand that the walk through fire, Gift City had to walk through the entire test of a public interest litigation also. At times I wonder, since this debate is on, that it should not be a bad idea if it is made mandatory that everybody who files such public interest litigations which are intended to stop developmental activity in India also disclose as a part of mandatory disclosure what their funding sources are. If in order to contest an election, I have to disclose my entire assets, all elected MLAs have to disclose their assets, our civil servants have to disclose them, and we have the RTI available against all of them. So these conscious keeper crusaders should be a little more transparent than us, and therefore the world must know as to where the funds for such litigation are coming, or whether in order to stop development, these are the litigations which may even be inspired by the funding sources itself. It will only add to the transparency and fairness of our system. I do foresee this making a very valuable contribution in the years to come. I have no doubt in my mind that the Gift City will be a tremendous success. But then its real success would be if other states, at least for creation of smart cities, start emulating this example. I intend, having understood the manner in which you have created it, at least writing to all chief ministers to undertake either directly or through their officials a visit and have a presentation as to how smart cities in their states itself could be created. As far as the central government are concerned, we have an enormous task ahead of us. So far, we've succeeded in changing the mood with which the general world of investors looks at India. We've succeeded in ending that mood of despondency. In terms of policy, we've opened the doors. We are inspiring people both within and outside to invest in India. We are trying to ease on our process. And that's work still in progress. There's a lot of distance in that we have to cover. We are trying to present a taxation regime which is internationally compatible, which is non-adversarial. In fact, even for these financial centers, the presentation which was made today indicated that they also need a very, very compatible taxation regime, so that investors, if they find that Dubai or Singapore is in the region more compatible than us, then they are going to beat us at the competition. So in order to attract the investor, and here the investor is the chooser, we have to present him a regime which is compatible, and it is for this reason that I have indicated a roadmap that corporate tax in India over the next 4 years will be gradually brought down to 25%, which is compatible by most international standards. And then you have to unleash sectors which have not been unleashed. So whether it's insurance or it's defense or it's real estate or smart cities or it's sectors such as coal, power, mining, it's a huge resource lying with us. And once these sectors are unleashed, it's then that the real potential of Indian economy is going to grow. There are comparable economies in the world which are today facing a far greater challenge. And therefore, in the natural course, as a more progressive emerging economy, we are likely to be the recipients of more visits and more investments. The ball is entirely in our court. We should never be satisfied with the fact that somebody has upgraded us. It's significant. It's positive. But then there is a lot of distance which we have to cover, and many more smart cities, many more such international financial sectors, a huge growth in exports that may generate in the financial sector itself. It's that which is going to add to our GDP, and that means more growth, more jobs, more revenue in the pockets of the government, better infrastructure that we can create, more poverty alleviation schemes that we can implement, and therefore the best remedy for poverty eradication in this country has to be that India has to grow. And I have not the least doubt that the initiative which the Gujarat government has taken along with the IFSL is going to be a great landmark in this particular area. I wish the future of the GIFT City a great success.
That was our chief guest, the Honourable Minister for Finance, Corporate Affairs, Information and Broadcasting, Government of India.